Hello and welcome to this League Bits Ultimate Ganking Guide. This tutorial is going to show you the important aspects of ganking to make sure you are able to carry your team and rank up faster through an active and successful early and mid game. This will be told from a jungler perspective, but ganking is a team activity and everyone should be helping out, especially you supports and roaming mids. I would say any gank that results in either an advantage for you on your team or something that can be exploited to gain an advantage later on is a successful gank. Killing the enemy is always preferable, but sometimes burning summoner spells or even just forcing them to back is enough to exploit that situation again in the near future. Without summoner spells, you can get that kill next time. With them going back, your laner can gain an XP and gold advantage for that solo kill pressure. Maybe you get a first tower, maybe you get a fire dragon. All these things are possible from a successful gank. A failed gank is pretty simple. I mean, if you die and give the laner double buffs at level 3 like I do here, that's a bad gank. And so you want to minimize those kinds of ganks as much as possible, and this is what I hope to help you with in this video. For now though, let's begin breaking down the process of completing a successful gank. The first thing is to consider the state of the lane. By this I mean, is the lane pushing towards you, or is it pushing towards the enemy? The importance of this is what makes a lane gankable in the first place. The enemy's location in the lane also directly affects your pathing, as well as the vision around it, and we'll talk about that in a second. If they're consistently pushing towards your tower, it's highly unlikely that they have zero vision in the area, and so it's something you have to take under consideration. The second part of considering the state of the lane is where are the minions? It's important to recognize that minions spawn at the same time for both teams, right? Thus, if you have a minion wave just crossing your tower, so does the enemy. This means there's a gap or space where you can gank without minions blocking you or interfering with the gank at all. Early game, most minions really do hurt. And many times you see people that are a bit more inexperienced ganking in a sea of minions, and essentially the minions do the most damage and kill them. You can see here my Scion just died 1v1 against the Tryndamere. And as he comes up, you can see there's a nice gap in the lane as Tryndamere is pushing. He's placed zero vision and the next minion wave is a ways away. It's only just now leaving their respective bases. I use the full array of my Rengar kit and the Scion shows up for the kill with a nice max range E. That's okay with me. I wanted him to farm the wave on this tower and knew I could handle myself in the meantime, baiting the Tryndamere and thinking the Scion isn't going to come. Now, it goes without saying, it's imperative to every gank that you understand what your allies' and enemies' abilities are, as well as what summoner spells are available and the potential CC and gap closer material in that lane. If you have tons of CC, as a Blitzcrank, Warwick, and Vayne gank does, layer it on top of each other to ensure that even if they have the flash up, they just cannot escape. The Soraka in this example has flash, but she literally cannot move until she dies, because the Blitz hooks, knocks her up, I fear her, and then Vayne condemns for the kill. Ensure you ping summoners whenever they're burned, and keep track of other lanes and abuse them when they're down. Understand when ults are used and urge your team to communicate this with you also. Now that the essentials are covered, let's focus on the actual gank as well as the pathing and vision around the area. Vision and pathing go hand in hand. Most people think a gank is simply walking up through the river to kill the enemy. Sometimes you can walk through a ward and complete a gank if you're fast enough and committed. Sometimes they're just pushing so far up in a long lane like top lane, the fact that you've burnt the flash a little bit earlier, or even if they do have the flash, you have enough CC and speed to kill them before they can even return to the tower. The worst thing you can do though is sit in a bush and have no clue if it's warded. Use your scanner, or just commit straight away, or tell your laners to clear. When you do come to gank, even if you sit in the bush for a second or two, it's important to watch your laner. If they engage, be ready to follow up immediately. This is how things should go, because the enemy will waste spells on your laner thinking you're not there. Keep pushing forward, don't sit and start to scratch your armpit and think about it. Remember this from the previous video with Maokai. Thankfully, Riot is inputting a warded ping, so from 7.16, the patch upcoming, this will make ganking much easier and you'll be able to keep track of where wards are and which bushes in which lanes. And you can plan your pathing around that. Now we shall look at some examples of ganking routes and paths in all three different lanes, prioritizing mid lane and bottom lane. Let's start with the mid lane and talk about vision in general. Mid lane may have the most possible ganking paths, but it's important to remember this is because it's a lane with two symmetrical sides. This means that creative pathing is needed in well-warded situations, as well as to create uncertainty about your actual location. Your pathing around the mid lane is crucial because it will affect how you approach the top lane and bottom lane after you're around that mid area. So because it's the shortest lane to gank, and because of its crucial location on the map, consider the jungle you are playing and if you're able to flank from behind over walls, such as with Elise and Rek'sai for example, and that you are able to exploit even more ganking routes because of this. Even so, the goal for smart pathing is to avoid the vision. It's to create the element of surprise. As you can see, understanding where there might be gaps in vision is crucial for how you approach it, and also as a jungler, how you defend and how you can use that information to have a good counter gank, for example, or gank another lane or counter jungle. In this situation, wards are placed badly in their bushes, allowing Ras to sneak up on his fellow Dark and Aatrox without him showing up in the minimap. Now, Ras shows up prior to when he should because he wasn't paying attention to the minion waves that I mentioned earlier. Nevertheless, it's a surprise gank that mid laner wouldn't have expected because of the coverage that he had. Maokai, on the other hand, possesses the ability to simply alter vision and tower dive from behind Italia, who has no idea I'm there at all. Here is the important part. If you are unsure of this vision, make sure you place a control ward or use your scanner, or pay attention to an item such as Duskblade, which can give away the location of a ward. Once that vision is clear, you can exploit that shortly, as now you know there is no vision there. Also pay attention to laner behavior when you gank. If they are backing off like the Aatrox does here, it's because he saw you and he's aware of your presence. You don't need to necessarily go too aggressive, but the next time you gank, choose one of the many different routes that are available to you. Don't be predictable. Change your angle of attack, have your laner know you're coming with good pings and even words in chat, so that they can prepare to use their abilities and ults and so on. You don't want to be caught out with no one ready. You don't want to catch your own laner with his pants down while you die underneath the tower when you could have secured the kill had he saved his cooldowns. Now that we've looked a little bit at the mid lane, let's consider the paths around bottom lane along with the abuse of the known vision. In this first example, my bot lane has communicated that the river bush is warded but the tri-bush isn't. I make my way down as Rek'sai, I see the enemy Thresh coming to rectify the lack of vision, and we collapse and kill him. And this next example is Rengar. I know that the tri-bush is warded and I know that the river is warded, but I also see that the J4, who I have a huge lead on, is really low and has nowhere to go. I use the plan to jump over into the river through the dragon pit and I come down from the top unexpectedly. We secure the kill and I go to rob some more of his jungle. However, what if both river and tri-bush are warded and you've been counter jungling? If you're someone like Maokai who can ult and tank the tower as earlier, you can do that, or if you're someone like Kayn, you have unique pathing to simply run through the wall, burn some flashes, and grab a kill. You surprise the living hell out of some of the laners with smart ganking and you make them paranoid to where you're going to come from next. Some of the best ganks come from the enemy's own jungle as you were counter jungling, because they simply do not expect you to be coming from that side. The last possible route involves what we call a lane gank, and this is severely underused by people who are a bit inexperienced, so I encourage you to use this in the top lane as well as the bottom lane. The lane gank requires you to pay attention to minion waves as well. Here, as long as you show up without the enemy minion wave going past the entrance to the brush, you can enter in the other end without being seen. However, let me show an example where this is done by the width of a hair. I'm actually support Maokai here and the enemy ward completely surprises me. We go all in and I die. I did not expect it to be there. It's important to keep your side bushes warded as a support, but we didn't have a full sightstone yet and we no longer had trinkets due to us warding the river and Warwick showing up previously. So what does he do? He changes up his approach and he lane ganks us instead. It completely swings the engage and I die. Ashe manages to escape, but all our sums are burned. So let's look at the vision for both sides on the left and the right. He sneaks in just in time as our minions pass in front of the edge of the brush that he is entering. Had he been a fraction of a second later, we would have seen him and backed off. I literally engaged and didn't see him, and he had just entered the bush because he paid attention to where the minion wave was. Let's transition this to the top lane where Elise and lane ganks my Kayn. It's easier to use the brush technique in top lane because there are 3 brushes instead of 2, and you can slowly walk through them with the minion wave without being seen. This is especially useful if your lane is the one pushing as well, or if the enemy of course has solid ward coverage and there isn't another way for you to enter the lane at all. As top lane is a long lane and a 1v1 lane, if the enemy is pushing, it's very easy to have a fast approach and burn some and grab a kill also. You don't need to necessarily always use a lane gank, but it's one of the most underused things in top lane in certain elos, so I encourage you to use that as well. And don't forget the top lane is very similar to the routes you can possibly have in the bottom lane. Here's another example. I simply read the Olaf's early clearing game very easily. I use my plan to jump over, hide in the bush, I get the gangplank to bait him in, and we get the gangplank a nice lead through nice double kills. I'm able to focus on other lanes and he snowballed. So make sure you incorporate these routes and these paths and these vision manipulations into your gameplay and clearing progression in the early game if the enemy is winning hard or consistently pushing. As with my last Warwick video, you can clear a ward, pretend to leave, and counter-gank right after. A lot about ganking and counter-ganking is mind play. It's predicting and it's reactive. Finally, never forget to exploit any advantages you get. Gank a lane over and over and over again if they push without warding, or simply, as in this Kassadin's case, don't have their minimap active apparently. In addition, consider the timing of your ganks. If you gank very early, unexpectedly, you can really swing the momentum at that point in the game already. And at the very least you can burn summoner spells, which helps your laners in those really early levels, and that's absolutely crucial as you hit level 6 and they don't have the flash up, but you do. Don't forget to also react to clean up ganks. There's such thing as clean up ganks. If your laner fights 1v1 and both are low, don't be the jungler who is farming while the enemy shows up and grabs a kill. There's nothing more annoying than seeing two mid laners very low, you decide to take your gromp and the enemy flanks around and gets that kill. Let's briefly discuss counter-ganking. The biggest difference between regular ganking and counter-ganking is simply that one of you is second to the action. This isn't always a bad thing, sometimes it's a good thing and it's intentional, as you saw with the Rengar Olaf example. The biggest aspect of counter-ganking is in your decisiveness. If you see a gank going down in top lane and you're able to get there at the expense of your own raptor camp, do so. Run up there, help your teammate out, and your raptors will be there afterwards. Many great ganks come from counter-ganking actually, because you turn the tides in your favor when it's least expected. Always keep track of all the action on the minimap, the location of wards, summoner spells and ult cooldowns. Communicate this with each other, it will make your jungler's life much easier. For more on this, see the early game jungling guide. Okay, I hope armed with this information you're able to make a bigger impact, especially from the jungle and support position, but as well as everywhere else. Thank you very much for watching. Please gank the like button if you enjoyed this content, comment and subscribe for more in-depth videos like this. Best of luck in your solo games this week, and as always, I will see you guys in the next tutorial.